Me karakia tātou. Tūtaua mai I runga, tūtaua mai I raro, tūtaua mai I roto, tūtaua mai I waho. Kia tau ai te Māoritū, te Māori ora ki te katoa, haumi e hui e, tā eki e. Nō reira, e te iwi, ka tū te pītongatonga o Hikerangi kia mihi atu, tuatahi ngā maunga tapu o tēnei rohe, ngā maunga tapu o Tamaki Makaurau, kia mihi atu ki o koutou a maunga tapu hoki, ko wai awau, ko Angie Tangaere awau no te taira whiti, ko au te kaitohu tangata whenua of the Auckland Co-Design Lab. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, kia ora mai tātou katoa. Such a pleasure to be online with you this morning. I'm Angie Tangaere and I'm the Director Tangata Whenua of the Auckland Co-Design Lab. Welcome into our space. Welcome to our Practice Foundation space. I'm just going to introduce our team and then we'll do our general introduction to the session. But I'm Angie, and joining me online today, part of our amazing team is Baruch and Lee and Penny, who's our Director Tangata Tiriti, and of course our guest speaker, Kimi Tangaere. And it's our pleasure to host you today. So if you're just joining us for the first time, this is a space for change makers, for innovators across the public sector to share some of the cutting edge pioneering practice geared towards equity, Te Tiriti-led practice. So it's a space for us to be sharing what we're learning and also supporting each other in this very challenging but meaningful systems change work. So welcome. Today we'll be talking about we'll be hearing from Kimi Tangaere from the South Auckland Social Wellbeing Board about how they've utilised Te Tokotoru in some work with rangatahi and their whānau, which is really exciting. And there'll be opportunities for you guys to connect. So, ka pai, is there anything else I need to cover off there too? Oh, just a reminder, if you can, or if you haven't already, if you could rename yourself with your ingoa, your name and your rōpū, it makes it easier for us to connect in the breakout rooms. So it'd be great. Thank you. Ka pai? So what we're going to start with is some questions. I'm just going to share a slide. So some of you will be familiar with Te Tokotoru. There are plenty of resources on our website, and also we'll provide some. I can't share my screen to share the slides, team. What we want to start with is we want to reorientate you with Te Tokotoru as a framework, as a systems change framework. And then we're going to get you to have a little chat together and do some whanaungatanga. And then we're going to do a little bit more of an in-depth intro to the framework itself. And Kimi's going to talk to how it's been utilised in her mahi. It was 1 year today that we introduced Te Tokotoru through Practice Foundations last year. So 1 year on, it's a really cool opportunity to revisit how it's been utilised. So just to remind ourselves what it looks like in the key components of it, drawn from the lived experience of rangatahi and whānau about what might support wellbeing in place. Te Tokotoru has 3 components. How are we responding to what whānau tell us they need? How are we supporting healing, and how are we supporting the strengthening of the spaces, environments and systems and networks that help whānau to be well? So strengthening, healing and responding are the 3 components of Te Tokotoru. You'll hear more about that shortly, but what we'd like to do now is we'd like to put you into breakout rooms, and we're going to get you to talk about 2 things in your whanaungatanga. We're going to get you to talk about something that you find is healing, personally healing, and then also something that you find for yourself is strengthening. So an example of something that is healing and an example of something that is strengthening for you. So in a moment, we're going to go into the breakout room. So introduce yourself. I think we're going to drop the questions into the chat as a reminder and talk about, give an example of something that is healing for you as a person and then something that is strengthening. Ka pai? Hoki mai te whānau. Hope you guys had a good kōrero and connected with some cool people. We'd really like it if people would share some of the whakaaro from in your breakout group. So just take a minute and feel free to drop it into the chat, or we've got a little bit of time if you just want to unmute and share the kōrero with us. That would be awesome.
I can share something that we talked about in our group, which might be kind of common to others, around the strengthening. Kind of talked about how our mahi often seems quite endless and it's hard to get kind of those moments of completion. And so we talked about one of the strengthening things that we find is something like mowing the lawn or building a shelf or something that's really tangible, really like did something, achieved something, and that kind of gives us that, you know, that sense that sometimes it's difficult to have in work that's really big.
Kia ora, Joy.
Yeah, we had stuff around healing and strengthening, which was spending time with friends and family, just people you want to spend time with, and like making those memories. So, you know, when you do spend time by yourself, you've actually got, you know, good positive things in your head to think about, that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Kia ora, Robert.
I can go with ours. So kind of a main theme I thought for lots of the people was that you know, connecting with you know, loved ones, and also nature, like mountains, hills, waterways and things, and growing food and stuff was ways that people found that they were healing and strengthening. So yeah.
Kia ora, Rufus. I can see in the chat lots of references to connection to people, to your own body, exercise, yoga, to the taiao, to creativity. That's cool. Anyone else got any more thoughts they'd like to share from their rōpū? Amy, what did you talk about?
Oh, the old voluntold. We talked about how being heard can feel healing, and that ability to really spend time with people. I probably did a bit of the old TMI and talked about, for me, like raising my tamariki is a really healing experience, and being able to give them the kind of yeah, the childhood that, or the experiences that perhaps I didn't have in the ways that I might have liked, and yeah, that it's like a strengthening thing. It's just slowing down the pace of the work, finding ways to kind of disrupt that frenzy, which I'm sure all of us find ourselves in at times. So yeah. But nice to notice the connections between things that are strengthening and healing as well, that sometimes are the same thing. Yeah.
Oh, kia ora, Amy. And a mihi to Jacob and Charlie, who are wonderful little human beings.
Right.
Amy's doing a great job raising those little human beings. Okay, kei te pai. I think we'll move into the main section now of our session today, and I'm going to do a little bit of a refresher for Te Tokotoru, and then I'm going to introduce our amazing speaker this month, Kimi Tangaere. So I'm going to try and share my screen again. I don't know if this is actually going to, oh yeah. So I've only got 2 minutes to do this, e te whānau. She's quite the challenge to share all of the stuff that sits with Te Tokotoru. But I just want to remind us that it's drawn from the lived experience and the innovation capacity and capability of our whānau and our rangatahi here in South Auckland. And so that sits at the heart of how this framework was built. And what we're using it to do is to centralise whānau and rangatahi perspective in terms of what they have identified will support well-being in place. And I'm sure many of you have recognised these components and the things that whānau, that you're working with whānau and rangatahi. But what the whānau and the rangatahi were telling us was that we really need to focus on opportunities for whānau and rangatahi to heal, and also to strengthen what already works for whānau and rangatahi in terms of well-being in place. Lots of the work that we do, lots of what we're investing in, commissioning, procuring is in the responding space. And what we're trying to do is use Te Tokotoru as a framework to help us push out into the potential of healing and strengthening and supporting well-being in place. And so really this is a systems change, in my mind, framework and tool that helps people to recognise firstly what are whānau describing in terms of what is healing and what is strengthening, what's already working in place. And then how do we orientate our effort, our resource, our focus towards those things that are strengthening and healing in place for well-being. That's not to say that there aren't already many organisations, many networks that are focused on these things. This tool really is for us as system innovators, as change makers inside the system, to help move our mindsets, our thinking and our capabilities so that we can reorientate the system response towards strengthening and healing. So that's just a little bit of a refresher. And now what we're going to do is we're going to hear from Kimi Tangaere from the South Auckland Social Wellbeing Board about how they've used Te Tokotoru to support the work that they did alongside rangatahi and their whānau. But firstly, tēnei te mihi ki a koe, Kimi. Nō te taira whiti a Kimi, he mārai kura nō te taira whiti, he wahine toa. Kimi's Ngāti Porou, Ngāti Pākehā, and born and raised in South Auckland. She's currently with the South Auckland Social Wellbeing team as part of the Evaluation Insights team. She's the proud mama of 2 beautiful tamariki, Akesa Arai Ara and Kiwa. And she's also a very good tennis player. She's the best tennis player out of the 2 of us, I have to tell you, team. She's got a master's in psychology and postgraduate in health population. She's very clever, very funny, and very beautiful, as you can see today. I might be a bit biased, but anyway, we're very, very privileged and lucky to have Kimi on the line with us to talk about her mahi. Did you want to do a little mahi, Kimi?
Yeah.
For the whānau, yeah, do it, mahi, yeah.
O he mihi tuatahi ki a koe te mātā mua. He mihi aroa ki a koe mo tō koro ai manaki a mai tā tēnei ata, nō reira tēnei te mihi. Kia ora mai koutou ki te whānau Practice Foundations. A big mihi to all your hard work and the beautiful way that you bring people together. And just to the whānau that are here, kia ora, thank you very much for having me. Oh, that was a wonderful intro. I'll come back as many times as you like if I'm going to be spoken about like that. Fabulous, I'll take it.
So can we tell us about how you've used Te Tokotoru with your mahi supporting rangatahi and their whānau?
Awesome, thank you. Thank you for having me. I guess the first point I want to make is that obviously there's a lot of political attention right now on the rangatahi and the ram raids and all the sort of kōrero that's happening around the young people right now. But I want to point out that this work had started prior to that sort of, that being, I mean, ram raids have been happening for a while, but just before that kind of political attention came. So yeah, we've been doing some awesome work with some of our rangatahi and whānau and supportive ecologies around our South Auckland whānau, and I'm just keen to share some of that stuff with you guys today. Yeah, so what we did was that we reached out to whānau, we reached out to our rangatahi, we reached out to people that worked with our whānau rangatahi, and we also talked to a school, Red Hill School. You guys might have heard of the school. It's quite an exemplar school that didn't shut down over COVID. They're doing things quite differently. They're doing a lot of healing and strengthening in the school space, connecting with the whānau that are really, really awesome. I could talk about them for 4 hours. So, but just to say that there's some amazing work happening there. This work wasn't designed to, I guess, prove any statistical power or do any sort of typical research and evaluation type stuff. It's insights work that's working alongside whānau. But what we can say is what they've shared with us, we can say are confidently coming through the data are these insights that we need to understand what the system conditions are to support what they're sharing with us, what they're telling us are healing and strengthening to their well-being. Just another note is that we didn't just talk to young people that were known to services or known to the police or part of the fleeing driver incidences. We talked to a whole range of rangatahi from different places and spaces within South Auckland. And one of those reasons was to see whether these insights, there were similarities or differences across the insights. And just to tell you now, there wasn't. They actually shared really, really similar insights across those groups, which is really cool. And just to acknowledge that it wasn't just the work that I did, it was the whole team and everyone else that supported the team, including TSI and Auckland CoLab that supported us on this learning journey around using Te Tokotoru. So, and there's some really practical ways that they did that, because you can be shown a framework, right? You can have a beautiful framework, but everyone will support that framework differently. And it was just a really awesome opportunity to connect to the people who were there in the inception and help us do our mahi that was held to the way that the model was intended. So that was super helpful as well. And just to finish off in the intro, that just how beautiful our rangatahi are. They're so amazing. Like when you just have a chat to them and there's the ability to do that, there's a little bit of trust and there's a little bit of room. They're so poetic, like the way that they talk about their experiences. And, you know, you guys can envision that some of these experiences for these young people are pretty traumatic in their short space of life. Yeah, but the way that they talk about it and their willingness to share is actually quite amazing. So I really just want to shout out to the rangatahi and their whānau that we're a part of this journey and continue to be a part of this learning journey with us. I forgot to say, yeah, South Auckland Social Wellbeing Board. Yep, shout out to my bosses and everyone. Yeah, you guys can look us up, but basically we're a place-based initiative. And I guess what's really awesome, I guess the potential of the work that we do is that we sit across 13 government agencies. So it's quite an awesome platform for system change. What I might now do is move into the insights, if that's okay. So I'm just going to share my screen. Also, I do tend to waffle on. If you've got a question or you want to ask something, then please just yell out. The hand thing won't work for me, but I'm sure the team will tell me if someone's got a question or something. So I'll just start with this one. Is that thumbs up, team? Can everyone see that? Is that loading, team?
Oh, you froze there for a bit. Coming up might be just taking its time to load. We can't see anything yet.
All right, I'll redo. Anything?
It says that you've started screen sharing, but it's just like a black page with the white writing on it. That's what it is.
Just give it a few secs. Apologies, team. I'm not sure what's happening. I'll give it another go.
We could try to email it to one of the team, Kimi, if that it might be on your end. So maybe if we email it to the team, or if the team's got it, we can share it for you. Because it seems like the Wi-Fi on Kimi's end's a little bit.
I'm just going to try and bring it up for you.
Okay, Penny's going to bring it up for you, Kimi.
Thank
the
you.
Power of Practice Foundations. E te whānau, it's interfering with the signals across Aotearoa. It's positive vibrations. Oh, there we go. I think
Is that
Penny's got it
right?
up for you, Kimi.
Is that okay, Kimi? Does that look right?
I think she's frozen. Has she dropped out? Oh, there she is. Kimi, you're on mute.
Oh my goodness. So sorry, Father. Are we back?
Hey, te pai. Hey, te pai.
Okay. Awesome. So apologies, team. My expertise is not in this technical stuff, okay? It's talking to whānau, which is the good stuff. Okay. So what I really love about this model, what we really love about this model is just the reorientation it gives you. It moves you away from that typical response. What are we going to do to this thing that's happened? And it makes you just open your eyes to be a little bit broader around intergenerational wellbeing and equity. So it just pulls you out of that space a little bit. And that's absolutely what's happened for our rangatahi, is there's been a lot of focus and attention onto the response. What are we going to do to stop the offending? What are we going to do to stop these fleeing drivers? But there's nothing really padding around that. So what I want to do is just share some of the insights from the healing and strengthening that they've shared with us with their whānau as well. So next, if you could just click through, please. So there were 6 healing insights and 5 strengthening insights that whānau shared with us and their rangatahi shared with us. I'll just talk to a couple of each one, otherwise we'll be here for a while, but really happy to talk to anyone that wants to talk about this afterwards, and also send out the full report that we've written up on this piece. So I guess the number one question is that everyone asks us, why are they doing it? Are you working with the Ram Raiders, or why are they doing it? Why are they doing it? It's such a complicated, complex, multi-layered sort of reasons. There's no one reason, and absolutely boot camps is not going to be the answer. It's so layered and intergenerationally impacted. So the first insight that we're talking about here is, I've called it movement to be still, but the young people were sharing things of, just as a young person, just as being rangatahi, there's so much happening in your body. There's lots of neurological changes, biological changes, social changes. It's quite a big time of change for these young people. And when they're carrying a lot of mamai from different spaces as well, they talked about the need for them to engage in activities that are going to somewhat bring up the noise that's happening internally for them. So they're engaging in activities like the fleeing car episodes, so that they can get some balance, so that they can rest. That's what they're really looking for. There's just so much going on with them internally, so much going on with them externally, that they're looking to create an equilibrium so they can actually have some peace and some rest. And this is a quote from a young person. It's 3 hours of freedom versus 3 hours of hell at home. There's just so much going on that they're just trying to find a balance. And the more sort of trauma, or the more kind of noise that's happening internally for them, the more riskier, or the more high risk that the activities externally have to be, so that they can find that balance. So they're really looking for movement to be still. And another example is a young person she travels all the way down, she hitchhikes all the way down to Taupiri Maunga to lay with her nana who's on the maunga. So all the young people in one way or another were talking about having to move somewhere to find some stillness or some peace. The second insight, which if it could come up please now, team, is utilising all senses. So this in particular so when we talked to the kaimahi that work with rangatahi, we had Māori and Pacific practitioners, and we had non-Māori and non-Pacific practitioners. And the way that the practitioners talked about the young people was quite different. So our Māori and Pacific practitioners were talking a lot about intuition, a lot about just knowing what the young people needed, just feeling what the young people needed, where our other non-Māori, non-Pacific practitioners were just talking about rangatahi in a different way. I would say, what would they share with you that's healing and strengthening, and how would you know? And they would say things like, oh, because they told me. So knowing and feeling and being told are just not right or wrong, one's not better than the other one. It's just a different way to understand the connection and the healing and strengthening of Māori and Pacific practitioners. Like, for example, we're contracted as mentors, youth mentors, to talk. That's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to make a plan, talk to the young people, work stuff out, and get some mentoring happening. But and create a care plan and write that in and submit the report. But for a lot of the practitioners, they knew that it was the young people just didn't want to talk. And so they would take them up to Bastion Point and they would just sit there and not talk, which is quite, exactly what they're not supposed to be doing. But they just knew that the young people didn't want to talk and that's not what they needed. And often the young person would just rest, but actually just lay down beside the mentor and just rest. Again, linking into that movement to be still. 1 second. Elements have cleansing power. That was a really important one as well. They talked a lot about water in all different spaces. Red Hill talked about it when the tamariki were perhaps frustrated or needing a bit of a break. They would encourage the young people to go and wash their hands. Just the connection to water. Our whānau talked about the need to be maybe to have a bath or a shower or go to the beach and be in the water. And our young people also talked about the necessity to be close to water and how cleansing it can be for them. So the elements, and not just the water, but also sun, all the stuff which is linked up and backed up by traditional research around being connected to the environment is super important to the young people too. Can I go to the next one, team? Connection to Taiao and Tupuna. So I've already given one example about the young person going back to see her nan. That's because she felt that she was the only person that ever listened to her. So the connection to your tupuna, and another young person from this beautiful quote talked about the ability to rest again, linking back to that movement to be still and the need to rest. They're so exhausted that she really loved the windows in her room, that they're important for the stars, who she saw as her tupuna, to watch over her while she rested, and how important that was. And the connection again to the fresh air and the outdoor te taiao. The next one, team. Rangatahi want to contribute to the whānau, and I think this is a really good one. It's a misconception, I think, out there that our rangatahi just don't want to be connected, want to do their own thing, and that they're sort of disconnected from society. But all our rangatahi talked about wanting to contribute to their whānau in different ways. And often when our rangatahi have been part of an experience that often hasn't been a mana enhancing experience for their whānau, there's some healing that needs to happen between the whānau and the young person to bring them back together. The rangatahi absolutely want to contribute, they just don't know how. And so a really clear example is the just something really simple. The youth worker supported the young person by just getting $5 worth of a colouring in book and some colouring in pencils, and the young person took that home and shared that with the siblings. And for the mum, that was enough to shift. For the mum to see that young person doing something supportive to his siblings really shifted the dial just enough so that they could start the dialogue and start some healing between mum and the young person. So the contribution is absolutely, there's a willingness there to contribute. They're just not given the opportunities or know how as young people. The last one, team. Whānau, a best space to heal whānau. And this has been found in many spaces that they have been using Te Tokotoru. Often the starting point is healing versus responding. So our whānau talked a lot about wanting to heal. They're carrying a lot of intergenerational stuff. They want to do activities and go to places that are healing for them. They talked about the beach. They talked about going on holidays, being together and connecting. But they also talked about wanting to heal collectively across other whānau as well, which is really beautiful because the episodic way that we respond to services, how it's kind of in and out, or it's for a short-term time frame, means that the way that we, I guess, other spaces that can be enduring to support and heal our whānau is really, really important. And that's whānau healing whānau, particularly when they've got shared lived realities and shared lived experiences. It's a nice connection point for whānau to come together, and they want to heal each other. They don't want external people to do it. They want to be supported to do it themselves. If we move now to the strengthening, oh, one more, yes, of course. Finding a place within and across whānau. So this was for a lot of our young people that moved across whānau for various reasons. And there's something really important about your tūranga waiwai and knowing who you are and what your contribution is. For one of our young people, she had moved across five, I think, and she was only 14 families, and her place within that whānau changed each time. So when one whānau, she was the mātama, she was the oldest, and then another whānau, she was the youngest, and of course with other siblings across those whānau, and she just wasn't sure what exactly her place was in the whānau, which means she didn't know what her contribution could be. So, and for a lot of our whānau too, they have siblings that they don't even know where they are. So there's a lot of, I think, opportunity for us to support the connection and whanaungatanga within and across whānau, and that's what our young people talked about as well. Moving now to some of the strengthening insights. Our whānau want opportunities to lead, and again, I think this has come through other work in South Auckland. I love this quote. We want them to say, this is your hikoi, you be the leader. They absolutely are up for it. They want to be the leader. They want to contribute. They know what's going to work for their whānau, but they're just not given the opportunity. The system doesn't create the conditions for them to show that leadership. Next one, please, team. Strengthening parents, strengthens everyone. And this is a really cool one. It's basically that when you're on the aircraft and you put your mask on and before you can help somebody else, it's kind of that mentality. And when we talk to our young people, and I think this coincides with some of the research from the Children's Commissioner's Office around when we ask them, what's the best thing we could do for you? What's something really cool we could do for you? They would talk about, oh, can you help my mum? Can you help my dad? Can you help my whānau? So that absolutely is young people thinking about some really important stuff about their parents and the Pākeke, the generation above them. How can they be well supported? And I can give some examples in the systems change talk coming up shortly about that. And just one more. Genuine engagement and participation from adults. So the next three are quite interconnected. In so many of the spaces, our young people are just not heard. That's everywhere across, and at home, as well as every other space that they kind of find themselves in. So I think there's opportunity, and I think we're growing into understanding how our our pepe are inherently born with mana and our tapu. I think it's not dissimilar for our rangatahi, but we just think about them in a different way. When I said to the young people, how would you know? How would you know if someone's genuinely engaging with you? What would you see? And they said, oh, well, they wouldn't give me one-word answers. And this is the beautiful quote here. They genuinely want to connect, but they feel so disconnected from so many spaces and people and places in their lives that they're looking for that connection. And they will know that, and they will feel that when adults are engaging with them in a different way. They talked about often adults are looking down at something, writing something about them, and not even looking at them, not even connecting to them as humans to have conversations, So what are the conditions we can create for genuine engagement and participation from adults that young people will respond to and reciprocate to? Next one, different ways to communicate, links into the other one above and the one that's going to come up shortly. Red Hill School gave a really beautiful example of the young people. So they have this beautiful thing called a communication wall that they have at the school, and it has various words up on the wall. And when sometimes the young people are coming into, and don't forget, some of our fleeing drivers are 8 years old. It's not just sort of the teenagers, they're young children. They can come in and they can show the teacher, they can point to the words on the wall. They don't have to actually say what's happening for them. And that takes away the guilt and the shame for the young person to describe something. So all they have to do is go, something at home last night. And then the teacher will go, okay, I've heard something's happened at home last night. The kid doesn't have to actually say it. And then they have these beautiful healing and strengthening spaces, korimako, that they take the young people to within the school. So there's something about the ways that the ability that we create, there's something about the way the system can support different ways to communicate. And that links into activities that the young people want to be on the same page. They want to connect. They absolutely, all the rangatahi talked about this. They're just not given the opportunities or conditions to do that well. But they talked about some beautiful examples where it was happening well at school, kapahaka, something about the way that when they sing together and lift each other, that's an activity that creates them to be on the same page. They know what their contribution is. And they can also take pause. So when you might run out of breath and you're singing, someone else picks it up. So that, again, these things are all interconnected and linked. They're quite beautiful. Can I go to the next one, team? This is another beautiful example from one of our mamas that talked about, I don't like push-ups, but that's the language my children speak. So that's, again, those three things: genuine engagement, different ways to communicate, and activities that support being on the same page. Really simple things that connect to our rangatahi in a meaningful way. So now those were the initial insights, and lots of, and this is sort of like quite a rush through them. But again, I'm happy to send the report out and talk to anyone about them in depth. There's actually lots and lots of layers to those insights. But what we saw once we had the insights and we sort of stepped back, where there were observations about those insights, which I'll share now. So the first one was that often our whānau work hard to get around the system in spite of the system. So actually, which I think we all know, the system doesn't support or serve our whānau very well. So they're trying to get what they need, and often they'll go around the system to do that rather than the system enabling it. The next insight is that healing and strengthening actions are temporary. So they did identify some healing and strengthening, but often these things were episodic or short-lived. Also, sadly, when they talked about healing and strengthening activities, often those things were the things that were taken away from the young people as punishment. Because, yeah, not too sure why, but those were the things that sort of were instantly removed, which is quite an important thing to note when these things are what are sustaining our young people for wellness. A safe space is a healing and strengthening space. A really good example, you know, we work a lot through the family harm Mihi in South Auckland, and we talk about safe spaces for our whānau. And a really good example was a young person who was a new mum and was in a situation, and she was supported into a safe space, what we would say is a safe space from a systems perspective. So she was away from the person that was harming her. But as a new mum, she also wasn't allowed to share the address or show, you know, have people come and visit her. So she was really, really isolated. And when you're a new mum, and even just a young person or even just a human, to be isolated in that way is absolutely not a healing and strengthening experience. And we lost her. She left that space, and because it wasn't a healing and strengthening space. Although from a systems perspective, we would say that's a safe space. So learning there too for our safe spaces. Just two more observations, and I think I've already spoken to this a little bit. Examples are often interconnected. So, for example, I said to one of the young people, "Oh, what do you love doing? What do you like doing?" He said, "Oh, going to school." And I was like, "Fab, that's amazing. What is it about school that you like?" And he was like, "Oh, well, I like to, you know, be with my friends, and I'm gonna. What it means is I'll get a good job one day." And I said to him, "What will happen if you get a good job?" And he said, "Well, then I can give some money to my whānau." So just in that short corridor, he's connecting several insights into one. You know, it's strengthening parents, contributing to your whānau. It's really cool that these things are all interconnected, and so it's really, really amazing that they can articulate that too. And the last observation that we've got here is that healing and strengthening spaces are often described outside the home. And I felt quite potty about this when I saw this one, because you would hope that your home environment is the safest, you know, is the most healing and strengthening space. But from the observations of the insights, the activities, the spaces and places that our young people talked about were outside of the home. Almost all of them were outside of the home. The only times that it was inside the home, it was with the connection to music, when they're listening to music in their room, or the shower and the bath, being connected to water at home as well. That's the end of the insights.
Would you like me to stop screen sharing, Kimi?
Yeah, or should we just carry on into the systems opportunities?
Halfway.
Is that okay?
And you jumping in here?
Yes, well, I'm just going to say, beautiful corridor. I love hearing the deep insights from our rangatahi and whānau. We're just a little bit over time, Kimi. If I know this is a very important part of it because it's going to lead into the questions, but yeah, just to give you a bit of a time check.
Okay, I can do this. Okay, I wanted to share with you guys three different examples of how we've supported these insights into our mahi from a systems perspective, and they're different types of I guess opportunities. So the first one is the youth court. If we can just click through and just show all of them on this side, that would be great. What's really fab is that there's some healing and strengthening actions now, and there's a whole whakapapa to this about talking with the youth court judges here in Manukau, but also nationally. We flew down and showed this healing and strengthening work to them. They want to make a difference in the court, youth court, and so what they've decided through, actually, to be honest, it's through the leadership of one Judge Molisi here in South Auckland. She wants to see healing and strengthening actions in the plans for the young people. There is already, I guess, some efforts towards healing and strengthening. There's a section 7AA, which is a culturally responsive component of the plans, but often they're not meaningful activities that our young people would engage with, and they're often things that are told that they have to do again. So they're looking for healing and strengthening, and she's been pushing back on these court plans if they're not, which is really awesome. For example, a young person was supported in the fleeing car incidences to be supported to a fishing trip with his dad, that Ngāti Whātua, his iwi, were going to support him in. So it's all these things about being connected to the water, being connected to whānau. They taught him how to fillet a fish, so his contribution to whānau, all these sort of insights wrap up into these activities. And so they're supporting doing those sorts of things and plans versus the traditional way of write an apology to the victim, write an apology to this, sort of things that aren't very healing and strengthening, not only to the young person, but also to the victims. So yeah, it's really cool. They're doing these really cool initiatives that are healing and strengthening, which is quite different. And this is being reaffirmed by the workforce, because just naturally, and this is a nice surprise, youth coordinators are Māori and Pacific, majority of them are Māori and Pacific, so they're also pushing back and wanting deeper healing and strengthening actions in the plans, not just teach the young person their pepeha, which I don't want to put down. I just mean there's lots of other things that we could do that are healing and strengthening. What we think that's doing is helping the system to invest in what matters and will make a difference to the young people. The next one is we're looking at discourse and discursive formation. So this is for us as a team working across the 13 agencies. When we're talking about our whānau in South Auckland, often we talk about them in a really deficit-focused way, and we're trying to reframe that. So I don't know if you read the blurb for today, but it talked about a significant reframing that we need to do around our whānau to be more strength-based, and that's a healing and strengthening action for our whānau. So we don't talk about things like high needs, complex, vulnerable, which can denote, I guess, an element of being a bit of a burden on society. Even the vulnerability thing can lead to some genetic inferiority kind of thoughts and biases. So we're reframing, and we're talking about our young people in whānau as priority populations. We're talking about them as whānau navigating complex systems. Anything that we can put the onus back onto the system versus our whānau is super, super important. And there's a few other, I've got 8 pages of the way that we're trying to reframe our practice, which I think would be a really practical example for the whānau here. So happy to share that after this, because I'm going right over time. But the idea is that we embrace a different way of working, and we replace it. We embrace the deficit, we acknowledge it, and we replace it with the strength-based stuff. If we can change our thinking, we can change our language. If we can change our language, we can change our practice. What we think that will help the system do is to decolonize our mindsets. And then the third one I'll just speak to super quick is called Tahi Te Whakaaro. So that is a prototype that was established specifically for the fleeing car cohort, if you like. It's a different way of working. There's a different starting point with whānau. They walk with whānau, but they don't say, what are we going to do to get your child to stop, offending. They say, how can we help you to be the whānau you want to be? And they talk about this, what's the great stuff that's happening in this whānau, and they come from a really strength-based position. So again, that's linking into the insights, strengthening parents, strengthens everyone. They've got different ways to communicate. So they do an illustration. So they've moved from, often their young people has these plans that happen to them, and they're just words in a document. They don't really mean anything. But what they do is they do a drawing with the young people. You're here now. Where do you want to go? Okay, this hui today is about the things that are going to help you get to that point. And again, that's genuine engagement. It's communicating differently with our young people, and it's meaningful work for the young people. They're much more engaged, and they can see themselves in the mahi. Often, when you think about healing, it's our beautiful Moana Jackson talks about restoration as a process. It's not It's not an event. And so the process has to be a healing and strengthening process, not just the things that you're doing as well. And what we think that is doing is helping the system to provide support without formal involvement, which can be stigmatizing and our whānau don't want to be a part of for many, many reasons.
Pai. Is it Kimi?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm sure the whole of our whānau online, thank you for that very deep and beautiful kōrero. And what I like, what I take away from some of the kōrero that I've had with Kimi is that, and I'm sure you guys probably have experienced this too, is that intuitively human beings recognize there is a need for healing and strengthening, but when you're sitting inside our systems, we quite often think the onus for that is the individual to go away and do that healing and strengthening. And those three last examples were like perfect demonstrations of how actually the system needs to, we need to reorientate the system to value healing and strengthening for whānau as well-being and equity contributions. And so how do we work in a way that helps us to do that inside of our systems and our processes? We've gone a little bit over time, so we're going to do a little change up for the activities. And what we're going to do, and I know that was a lot of kōrero e te whānau, so don't worry, because there's going to be lots of resources available, including the report for you to access. But I think what we'll get them to do, Kimi, in a moment is we'll get you to ask your prompt questions, and then we're going to just get people to take a couple of minutes to jot some things down. We won't put the whānau into a breakout group. So what we'll get, team, is if you've got a bit of paper and a pen nearby, Kimi's going to give you a couple of questions, and then we're going to give you a few minutes just to reflect on the kōrero and answer those questions, and then we'll come back for a wider group kōrero. So did you want to give your provocations, Kimi?
Yeah, awesome. So thinking about your first breakout room kōrero team, and what the healing and strengthening things were that you talked about. And then in this next breakout, I want you to think about either what are the opportunities coming up for you in your system or service organization, and what would it take? Two things. What were the opportunities where these healing and strengthening things can be enacted? And then secondly, what would it take for the system that you work in to support your healing and strengthening insights that you shared with each other?
I'll get Kimi to type those questions into the chat section for us so that you guys have got them. But what we're not going to do a breakout. What we're going to give you is just a few moments to reflect on the kōrero and then those questions, and then we'll come back together. And if we're lucky, one of the team will play a little bit of music. This is an impromptu activity, so bear with us. E te whānau. Oh, Brooks put them in there. Thank you, Brooke. No, that was a lot of kōrero and a lot of thinking, but I know you guys are up to it, team. So I think what Kimi's trying to prompt is, we got these great insights, but what can we think about in terms of systems opportunity in our own mahi? What could we do today or tomorrow to reorientate our efforts and resources? So we'll just give a bit of space for people to unmute and share some of the things any insights, any whakaaro, or any ideas they might have for their own mahi, given the kōrero that we've just heard.
Okay, because I've got a few things down. And initially I put, we need a collective mindset and absolute commitment. And what I see, particularly in health, is that there's a lot of talky, but when it comes to action, and supporting people who are courageous enough to step into that action, people backtrack pretty rapidly. That we need courageous leaders who will be the po for these insights. So people who will invest their support in those of us who feel strong enough to use these insights one by one. That there needs to be a change in how our work is recognised, and that you spoke about that a little bit, Kimi, about whānau feedback versus the number of visits a person makes or the amount of time a person is working with whānau, that actually whānau feedback is really undervalued. And that's the kind of stuff that validates us as working with whānau. And we've sort of said that earlier on a lot. So having that feedback from people that we're investing our time and energy and insights with is very valuable. And then Angie, you talked about, so what can we do as individuals in our everyday mahi? Because it's very easy to kind of flip into, actually the system is something out there, but the reality is the system is this bunch of human beings, and we all have an impact on that system. We own it and we keep it moving in various ways. But for me, one of the points that I really enjoyed was the different language and mindsets and thinking, which I didn't have time to write down as you were talking, Kimi. So I'm going to have to go back and pull out maybe some key words to act as my mindset prompts when I come across language around vulnerabilities, around complexities of families, that kind of stuff. I think I can manage that, and that's what I'll be committing to. So thank you. It's been an awesome kōrero this morning.
Oh, kia ora. Yeah, Kimi's got so many great examples. One of my most favorite ones, and I can see there's a question from Tiff about using some of your stuff, Kimi, if you want to check the chat. One of my favorite ones is Kimi's got young person reports. And what that's doubling down on is that the young person is subservient to the process and the person that they're talking to. So there's no mana oriti in that process. And what's the flip one, Kimi? You've got like 3 examples, eh?
Oh yeah, it can just be young person shared, young person felt. You know, they don't have to report to a superior or their name, even that, you know, use their name, shared with us, told us, yeah. Versus young person's reported, wasn't observed by me. It's so deficit around our young people, the spaces that they actually get to contribute in the way that they're taught to. And I guess what this work did was give a really good overview of the current state for young people. And it's really clear that their voices are not heard or valued. So what are the conditions that we can do that? It's the flip side to that. Lots of our language. I mean, the biggest one that I find challenging from an equity point of view is the discursive formation or the narratives that we create. And one really common one is Māori and Pacific are more likely to. Like we say that all the time. Māori and Pacific are more likely to, and then it's always going to be some sort of a deficit, you know, more likely to drop out of school, more likely to be incarcerated or whatever it is. But it's not because we're Māori and it's not because we're Pacific. Our ethnicity, which is a social construct that we choose, isn't the explanatory variable for that outcome. But what we keep doing is grouping Māori and Pacific create to these deficit things, and that's again around the mindset of decolonizing your mindset and not creating the connection, this hardwired connection between Māori and Pacific people in South Auckland. Instead, as an alternative, you could talk about due to the, like, for example, if you're talking about, I don't know, rheumatic fever in your mahi, you could say due to the poor housing conditions that Māori endure, this versus don't make it about being the ethnicity. It's really deficit focused.
Yeah, I love all those great examples, and at the heart of it, it really is just trying to address the power imbalance, right? Because it's always, the problem is always on Māori and Pacifica. They are the problem in the way that we're currently the narratives play out. And I love what you're giving us as examples, because we're shifting the onus back to the fact the system is ineffective, not just for Māori and Pacific. Any other whakaaro that people would like to share?
Could I share one more thing? Sorry, now I've talked this whole time. Just one more thing, because I think it's real practical and helpful, is that with the youth court mahi, often that they don't actually talk to the young people. All they say is, like, they'll read a summary of facts and they'll list off the bad things the young person's done. And then the young person has an opportunity basically to confirm whether they did that or not. That's the extent of their voice in that process. And then they might also be asked at the end if they've got anything to say. What the youth court judges here in Manukau are asking for is support on how to talk differently, communicate differently, again, the insight. So I was able to share the stuff that Angie and the team shared with me around the healing and strengthening prompts. And so the judges are using those. And so the prompts are things like, what makes you feel rejuvenated? What do you look forward to? What makes you feel good? What makes you feel connected to the people around you? What helps you feel restored? And they're getting the insight. The young people need the conditions to share to be right for them. And so when they're asked these questions versus, did you do this? Did you do that? Got anything else to share? It creates a healing process for these young people, at least to have a voice in the process. So yeah, I think those healing and strengthening prompts are really, really important. Those are the questions that you can ask of your young people, of your whānau that you work with, versus what's healing and strengthening for you. You've got to ask different questions, which is a different starting point.
Awesome. If people don't have whakaaro to share, are there pātai that someone, is there a pātai that anyone would like to ask me about the mahi?
Kimi, I just wanted to tautoko some of the concept around how we're asking questions in order to elicit informative responses from young people. And one of the pieces of work that I've been doing through my master's in research was looking at the heads assessment model and looking at it from a Pacific perspective, and talking with New Zealand born Samoan young people, and just exploring the views around the questions that are asked, and as them as advisors, looking at alternative language for that. So this is really a good space for me to be in, to listen to these examples that you're using. And I think that's the crunch of some of the work that I've been doing is, if we're not quite framing questions in a way that creates an opportunity for young people to express themselves, then we're not quite getting the information to be able to do anything with the situation, and we're not able to support them. So I think, it's just really validating actually to hear around the way that we're engaging with rangatahi and how we're actually communicating effectively.
Awesome. Yeah, I can't share how much our words matter and the connections that we make unconsciously in the words, because the system reinforces that kind of speak. We have a whakataukia Māori that talks about your tongue is as sharp as a taiaha. It cuts people. It really hurts them. So, and that's saying people don't remember what you said, but they remember how you feel. No, they remember what you said, and they remember how it made you feel. So, just that little, just a little bit of effort costs nothing, just to change the discourse, the way that we're framing and speaking to our young people, and giving them the opportunity to ask us questions. Is really, really important. So thank you for that.
Kapai, we've probably got time for like one more comment or another pātai. Well, it's a bit shy today. I don't know what's going on. What's happening? Or maybe you're just the kōrero, it's resonating with you, the kōrero. Okay, te pai, we'll start to close up, I think. We'll just do some key takeaways. I'm not sure if the rest of the team or Penny wants to provide any key takeaways or insights. But for me, thank you so much, Kimi. That was really awesome. I just love the depth of the work and how you've been able to create some really practical tools and advice about how we can action these insights. It's not rocket science. It's not expensive. It's exactly what one of our whānau was just saying before. It's like how we can always say it's a system problem. It's a system problem. We are the system. We're showing up into the system in a particular way. So what I take away from that is like, what are the ways that I can be showing up in a different way that acknowledges and respects the insights that these amazing rangatahi have shared with us. And so that's the power of this work, I think, is to be able to have a really deep understanding of what rangatahi have told us are healing and strengthening experiences and spaces, and then how do I take that learning and integrate it into the way that I'm showing up in the system, into the way that I'm showing up with whānau. So I thank you for that, Kimi. And it seems very simple, but it's very powerful, because as Kimi was saying, the languaging, the thinking and languaging is embedding the power imbalances that exist in the system. And as Kimi says, we can think differently, we can speak differently, we can practice differently, then we need to deviate from the way that we are treating whānau and rangatahi in the system. And that helps us to rebalance the power and the control in the system just by those really practical examples. The other thing that I've been really lucky to hear about and think about from Kimi's work is that there's a great opportunity for us to show up differently and do things differently. And also we better stop doing what's not working really quickly. So we've got to grow our capability to think, to speak, to do differently, to practice differently. And we've got to start retracting what doesn't work. And I was so taken by some of the examples that the rangatahi were giving us, where what they were describing as healing and strengthening was the opposite of what we are procuring and commissioning right now. So if we can't learn from that quickly, yeah, we're not doing justice for our rangatahi, our mokopuna to come. So that's what I take away from the work is what can I be doing differently now, and what must I stop doing, or what must I let go of? That's not supporting well-being for whānau and rangatahi according to their perspective. Tini, was there anything that you wanted to add from that kōrero?
Kia ora. Ngā mihi nui ki a koe. Kimi, thank you so much for sharing that. Just really appreciate it. I'm a little bit familiar with the mahi, and I'm still going to need to go back and re-watch the slides in the video and just reprocess because it's so rich and so layered. There's just two things that I just wanted to reflect back in. One is, because what you've done is shown, like Angie said, quite like small but really powerful things, but within our influence, and then some of the bigger system influences, which is awesome. And one of the things that is almost like a trick for us is that some of the most powerful things, they are those smaller things, but they're not the things that make us feel like we're doing something. You know, our response to try, which is that response, kind of the black hole, the power of the responding is that we have to look busy doing something, which usually means commissioning a service, when in fact we could just be asking better questions. And for some reason that doesn't look like, you know, enough of a response. It's not the busyness that people feel like they need to see to reflect that we're doing something. So that's a mindset shift in and of itself, that the power of the things that we can be doing differently are not the things that we normally think are indicators of us putting effort into something. They're actually much more human and closer to us. So that in itself is like a bit of a challenge. And I think I just want to reflect that there's really deep responses coming in the chat to your kōrero, and a lot of it is around thanking you about the optimism that you're bringing. Like, you know, like this is a really hopeful thing that you've shared, which is, I think, really critical at this kind of point in time, that you're sharing the growth of strengthening and healing, the uptake of that, the power of that, the positivity of that, and also the power of what's going on for rangatahi and their own visions and aspiration and whakaaro. So I just want to mihi to you for that and acknowledge what's coming in the chat around that. So kia ora.
Kia ora, Penny. Yeah, I mean, it's not rocket science. Use people's names. Just use someone's name. It's not rocket science. They're a human being. One thing I would say about the small things being powerful is I think what Kimi's been able to do and the team's been able to do is there were some particular opportunities where these small things mean a big difference if the people in power are doing them. And so that's what I would encourage us to think about too. So if you've got judges pushing back on the system, it's sort of using the system against itself in terms of saying where does the power sit, and how are we helping those that have that power to think, speak, and practice in a different way. So mihi to you fellas for that, Kimi. Is there any closing words, Kimi, before we do a little karakia and let the whānau get on with their day?
Oh, no, just apologies for the issues at the start, team. Honestly, I love this mahi. I love the work. I love the framework. It's beautiful. To reorient the way that you think every day and support our rangatahi and our whānau. So thank you for sharing the model and letting me speak with you guys today. But if anyone wants to reach out afterwards, please do. Got screeds and screeds of reframing I can share with you, but also the report, and just want to acknowledge the team and everybody that was a part of this mahi today and ongoing. So, and to our beautiful rangatahi, amazing. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Just another little bit of hope from our rangatahi. I've got a mini pancake from my son who's on holiday. I'm in training camp, so he's made me a mini one, so I really appreciate that. Another one of our amazing rangatahi. Well, thank you for your
contribution to whānau, another insight.
Contribution to whānau, thank you. Thank you so much, Kimi, and I'm sure that the whānau online join me in congratulating you on this amazing, meaningful work, and thank you for sharing with us today. But I'll close up now with a karakia, if that's Katie Pai. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa te ata whai o tātou ara ki a ihu karaiti. Me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga tahitanga, ki te wairua tapu, ake, āmene. Have a lovely day, te whānau. See you next time.